All right, welcome back to the Canadian Gun Vault Behind the Vault Door. My name is Mark Morelli. I'll be your host for today's podcast, and I'm in the middle of a road trip. I've decided to take a little time to do a couple of things on the move. We're mobile. CGV mobile unit is on our way to do our best to preserve some history. And for those of you that haven't been keeping in line and following what's going on Instagram, we're calling this one CGV Preserving History. You will be made privy to some of the things we're doing after the fact. I'm sure there's going to be some imagery and maybe even some videos coming that will relate to this this particular road trip. But I'm here with my good buddy Sam, and Sam's a longtime member of the Canadian firearm community, longtime friend of mine. Sam, how you doing today? Glad that you're here.
Fantastic day. It's been a great drive.
Right, you liking this one, hey? It's going by pretty fast. For the people that are just joining us now, we've been on the road for about 3 hours, having a good time. It's going by real quickly because Sam and I are engaging in some fantastic conversation. Sam, you know what? Starting off, I'm going to ask you this because I know that you and I share a lot of the same opinions. Right, getting people out to the range. There's a lot of the general public that don't spend any time at the range, haven't thought about spending any time at the range or getting their license. What are your thoughts about members of the general public shooting guns, for the first time? I mean, you've introduced a lot of people to the sport, right? So, I mean, what's your thoughts on that? I mean, getting people out to the range. What do you think about it?
Well, the key thing is you don't know it till you try it. A lot of people do knock it.
Yeah.
I've brought people to the range that have never had the opportunity to watch it only on TV and only seen the negative side of it. I brought them the positive side of it, and now they themselves are PAL holders, and possibly most of them are actually went to the restricted class because they like the ARs and the fun, the modular, how you can change it and add things to it, and some of them went the Ruger 1022 craze. They've all turned onto it like it's their favorite flavor of life now. It's something they never knew was so enlightening and so relaxing.
Yeah, you know what, and that's one of the things that definitely I've noticed is one, a lot of people go out and they get their license and they don't bother to move on and take the next step, which is to get
some stay in that ramp.
Yeah.
They stay like with a 22 or something until they meet one of us and we let them try something different.
Yeah.
They're like, wow, I never knew that could be so much fun. Some people would look at a 12 gauge and, I don't want one of those. It'll knock me on my ass. And until they try it and stand properly and get to know how to use it properly, they don't know how much fun it actually is.
There's just so many different flavors of firearms out there. I mean, the idea that you could, stick with one gun or one gun type or engage in one activity.
That's impossible. Muzzle loading is so much fun.
Oh, you and black powder.
Think of that. Muzzle loading and black powder. That is just so much fun. You've got you're reloading right there.
Yeah.
Right in the spot.
And I mean, it sounds different. It feels different. I mean, there's just
different. History about it.
You know what? Actually, black powder is like a whole subcategory all by itself. And then, I mean, I'm not even going to get you going on cannon use.
Totally different.
Cannons, right? Like, I mean, Sam, there's a reason, folks, why we call Sam here Sam the Cannon Man. I mean, I've never seen somebody with so many different flavors of cannons and just enjoying sharing that passion. And mortars, right? The idea that you could pack a cannon with gunpowder and launch a projectile the size of a Red Bull can downrange is really kind of an exciting one for me. Yeah, and I mean
it's something else. Like once that fuse gets lit, the anticipation, and then it lighting off, and then you're seeing where it goes. It's like
it's
something else.
It's Independence Day all year round. That's what it is. I mean, for the people out there that ever took their kids to go see fireworks and as an adult enjoyed the idea of a fireworks display, shooting cannons and firing black powder, propelled firearms. That's what it's like. It's like your own personal fireworks show. And I mean, there's a skill, and it's an art, to load these things, to fire these things, to shoot them accurately. There's a huge degree of historical significance connected to items like these. But back again to getting people out. You get people shooting shotguns and rifles that may not encounter, depending on where what their range allows for. Restricted firearms like pistols and AR-15s and guns like that. The idea that they wouldn't encounter them or would deny themselves access to those kinds of things is really kind of silly. Like, I mean, it's like going to Baskin Robbins and only wanting to have vanilla and tiger stripe. There's just so much more out there. And I mean, you've seen a lot over the years. I mean, you got a favorite gun, Sam? I mean, is there a favorite? Is there a favorite?
Yeah, all of them.
All of them. Yeah, you know,
All of them. If
like
it
my
goes
kids.
Bang, I like it.
Yeah, see, people ask me that all the time. They're like, "What's your favorite gun?" I'm like, "They're like my kids. I love them all." You know, yeah.
Oh, there's no real. See, because I've gotten into so many different facets of the sport.
Yeah.
And it's enlightened me to like other things. You know, like when I started off with the cannon, then I started liking muzzle loaders. And
Yes.
I started liking, you know, and it carries on in it. And you'll find out, like one person said that they were strictly going to just collect 22s.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I got to get you together with Black Powder Dave. I mean, it's really important. I think that you two get together at some point and start lighting off, you know, some cannons and some black powder, you know, muskets. I not that long ago, we came into possession of a double-barrel flintlock pistol that I can't wait to actually pull the trigger on. And so, you know, we're just sorry, folks. We're getting some instruction from the lovely young lady of my GPS system that's taking us to our destination. Right, sorry for the interruption, but you know, though, I'm really enjoying this actual talk with you. This has been a lot of fun. I find myself, you know, wondering, you know, how we can get more people out shooting, and it's something that we're doing quite often now. And you know, like there's never going to be enough, in my opinion, people out there experiencing this for the first time. I love the looks on people's faces, you know, and
the first time.
The first time.
I've got some pictures of some of my friends firing a firearm for the first time.
Yeah.
And I show it to other friends. I said, "You remember your face looked like the first time?" And then I show them this picture, like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And really, that's a lot of what's driven the Instagram, you know, account here with the Canadian Gun Vault. Is I love capturing those first smiles. I love seeing that expression on people's faces when they get it. You know, like when it's like, yeah.
What I think our drive is to encourage more people to come try it.
Yep.
Smile like we do.
Yeah.
Enjoy it like we do.
Yeah.
And then they'll come up and thank us later. They do.
Yeah.
They say, thank you for introducing me the first time. You know, I see people at the range that I've introduced to the sport many, many years ago, or let try something else besides a 22 or whatever they were shooting.
Yeah, no.
One gentleman was just a skeet guy and never went down to the other part of the range. At the range, so I brought him down, and he had one heck of a time.
Yeah.
He's a restricted collector also.
Yeah, you know, I find that it's just about exposure. I mean, a lot of people don't necessarily feel comfortable. You know, they get used to using one item, and they start to, you know, feel pretty connected to that, and you know, they start to, you know, excel, you know, in that particular discipline, and the need or the desire to kind of branch out and do other things might not be great enough to, you know, drive them to get something different. But if you share your passion with them and allow them to fire, you know, something a little bit different, you'd be amazed the kind of results you get. Like, I mean,
it's like think of walking through your life with just a pair of penny loafers. Never tried running shoes, or never tried this, or never tried that, but then you try it, it's like, look at what I can do now.
Yeah.
I got hiking shoes. I can go hiking. Like, it's a different avenue.
And it really does fly in the face of that myth, you know, that people. I've heard this from people that, you know, don't quite have the exposure to firearms or aren't familiar with firearms. It's like, well, why would you need all these different kinds of guns? It's because they're all different. There's so many things that make a difference in the way it feels and the way it performs and the way, I mean, from the different calibers to the different barrel lengths to the different weights and the different materials used to the different action types. I mean, there's just so much that's available.
It's a fascination.
Absolutely.
It's endless, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, one thing that I heard you say earlier that I really can't forget is you know, you've had people ask you, and I know this is something that, you know, you would want to talk about. They ask you, you know, what is it you find fascinating about shooting guns, about owning guns? Like, what is it exactly? And I mean, because there are people that just don't get it because they haven't been exposed to it yet. And your response always is, right, come to the range and find out. Try it. Let me show you. Right? And I love that.
People ask me why, they have come forward and asked me, why do you own firearms? Mm-hmm. And the only way to answer that is take them to the range, try it, let them try it for themselves, and experience what we've been enjoying for many years.
Yeah, there's, you know, for the people out there that haven't tried it yet, I gotta tell you, if you can get yourself to a local range, if you got a friend, you know that shoots guns, ask them to take you. They'll probably be overwhelmed, you know, with joy that you might actually take an interest in something that they love. Because I mean,
some I had to just grab and take out to the range because I offer them many times to come on out. You're welcome to come on out. You know, it's not a problem. It's really easy. And they're a little intimidated, so I have to kind of like break the crust of intimidation and get right into the center of that cherry pie and let them enjoy this.
Yeah.
Oh, it's something else. I don't know how to describe it. You know, people try to ask me to describe it. It's kind of, there's no words and there's no real feeling. It's just I don't know. It's like a feeling of freedom and enjoyment. It's like riding a roller coaster over and over and over, and not having to wait in line.
Yeah. I mean, and you have access to it all day, every day, that you can take some time off and do it. I know people that play hooky from work. I mean, for the people that don't understand, what it is that we love about firearms, I can tell you that for some people, it's more than a hobby. Like people say, oh, you know what, we shouldn't have to sacrifice public safety to, fuel your hobby. I can tell you it's more than that. It's a passion. It becomes a lifestyle for people. They revolve, vacations revolve around it. People play hooky from work to go out to the range and enjoy themselves. I've seen people that have reloaded ammunition that can't wait to get themselves out onto the line to try what they just made. It's like a recipe that you've cooked up and you can't wait to taste it. They'll take a day off work. And they'll actually go to the range, and to see people experiencing that kind of, enjoyment in something, to know that they could have been doing this their whole lives. I see a lot of that now. You introduce people to this pastime, this lifestyle, this great sport activity that we love as firearm owners, and I love it when people say those words, unsolicited. I can't believe I could have been doing this all this time. I mean, you're telling me that, you telling me that I could have been doing this my whole life. I love the fact that there are people out there that are open-minded enough to realize that there's a group of people, right, that are, in fact, the finest citizens in Canada, that are out there enjoying an activity that not everybody enjoys. Not everybody goes through the trouble of getting a license. Not everybody goes through the trouble of actually owning a firearm, and going through the necessary certifications and safety courses.
Well, they got to try, because they're going to more than like it, that's for sure.
You know what? I feel that way. If they're introduced to it properly, responsibly, intelligently, and you're kind of prudent in your approach to how you get them shooting, I find that this might not be for everybody, but I think though it could be for a lot more people. And so that's why we here at the Canadian Gun Vault encourage people to get out all the time. I'm actively calling now for everybody within our Canadian Gun Vault audience, both on YouTube, Instagram, the people that listen to our podcasts, right, Facebook. Get that friend out, right, that has never gone with you before. Drag them out to the range, show them the kind of fun that we're having out there, because it's gonna work wonders for the community. It's gonna help us to grow, and as our numbers grow, so does our voice. And as our voice grows, so does our ability to change legislation. That's my opinion on the subject, and definitely something that I feel very strongly about. I don't know, would you agree with that, Sam?
Totally. It's nothing better than having good people with guns.
Absolutely. I like the idea of good people with guns.
On a good, solid front.
Yeah.
With a good mindset. I've never seen anything better. You go to the range, and most of the time, I spend more time, pardon the expression, shooting the shit than actually shooting. I sit there and talk to these people and try my stuff, and try stuff that they would never have, because I've got a license that gives me prohibited status that allows me these short barrel firearms that no one's ever even seen, let alone felt or had a chance to fire.
And what a shame it is, right? That people coming into the sport today, right, that have gone through the trouble of getting their license, that really find enjoyment in this activity, that they're unable to own some of the great firearms that were available to the general public legally prior to 1995. So there's a certain class of guns that, short barrel pistols. So, you can own a .44 Magnum in this country if you love shooting Magnum handguns, but you can only own a .44 Magnum if it has a barrel length longer than 4 1/4 inches for our American listeners, and 106 millimeters for our Canadian, imperial or metric rather listeners. I can tell you that what a shame it is that the people that were not in possession of these items before 1995, who came into this sport a little bit late, are unable to enjoy the excitement of shooting a short-barreled Magnum pistol just because they were, born a little too late or came into the activity a little too late. One might actually make the argument that, it's a little bit discriminatory. Quite frankly, if, you're allowed to own those items, there really isn't any reason why I shouldn't be able to as well, would be my argument.
Well, true, and if I was a problem, I think they would have known it by now.
Yeah, if everybody has been certified and is qualified and government approved to own firearms, there really shouldn't be any reason why one grouping of people should be allowed to while the other group of people is not. So, I'd make that argument.
Trying to wean them out is what they're doing.
Yeah, they are.
Because once they grandfather me out, and then once I pass, they will no longer exist. They got rid of us just like they did the pit bulls and anything else they didn't like.
And
I deemed dangerous for some reason.
Yeah, there's a very strong argument here, folks, that back in the 90s they segregated firearm owners into subgroups, and what they did was they imposed a set of rules that would allow those owners to be in possession of those items for the duration of their lives, and then upon their passing, those items would be destroyed. And what that does is it basically thins the number of firearms and the firearm owners are passing, and it will eliminate that class eventually through attrition. People are dying in that class and unable to pass some of these items down to their heirs the way any other estate property would be, I might add. Firearms are the exception. Apparently, for whatever reason, firearms are not considered to be, in the eyes of the law, the same as other property, which I think is wrong. But you've got this group of people that are passing, and as they pass, the firearms are being melted down and destroyed, and that's part of the reason for our trip today. We're going to make sure that some firearms are not destroyed. That's one of the primary mandates of the Canadian Gun Vault, in addition to getting new shooters out every week and advocating very strongly for the firearm community and for educating the public and entertaining them as well about firearm ownership in this great country. We're also doing our best to preserve history by saving as many firearms as we can from the melting pot, and that's in part the reason for our road trip today, and I'm really glad to have Sam here for that. So, I mean, Sam, that's about all the time that we're going to have for this week's podcast. I'm really pleased that I could have you here on the show. Thank you so much for joining me on this trip, right, and for the podcast, buddy. Great to have you here.
Hey, the fun and good times are ahead of you. Come try it.
Absolutely. Thanks very much for listening, folks. Have a safe and fun weekend.